We create high performance in our life by being proficient at something. I reference this study like the most trusted man in America is Tom Hanks. And it's not because we know Tom Hanks that well or we know all the good things he does in the world. We just know that he's a very proficient actor. He's mastered his craft. Whatever he is in, he does an amazing job. That builds trust. If you are proficient at your craft and you are good at what you do, that is going to build trust and make you successful.
I loved learning about you, and I do this every time I meet somebody. Jason, I'm so excited to have you with me because a couple of things that really stood out is you're a music lover, and music has almost shaped a lot of your life, a lot of your journey. And I love that from Bowie to all the people that you mentioned in the book. And I also have Jason's book, The Soulful Art of Persuasion, with me. It's super good. Everybody should grab a copy. But Jason, thanks for joining us, dude. I'm excited to have you. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself so we could start this thing off.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, so I was a weird kid. I grew up in Virginia.
Yep.
You did too, right?
Go Virginia.
Go Virginia. And so I I always knew that I wanted to go into advertising and marketing. So my parents were both teachers, and they were academics, and they were avid book readers, which is ironic because I wrote a book. And I kind of rebelled against that. I was like, I'd like to go and experience things. And that's how I learned. That's the way I learned as a kid. And I also would watch TV, and I saw these commercials in between like the shows I was watching. And I was probably like 13 or 14, like maybe around like my kids, your kids' ages.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, someone does that for a living and like comes up with a Kool-Aid man and, Mikey likes it and, Lego my ego. I was like, that seems fucking easy and cool. And like, that's a fun job. So I kind of always knew I was going to go into advertising. And then I always knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit. This was when I was older now. And I was like, all right, I'm going to learn the craft, get into advertising, work at a bunch of different agencies, journal down what I liked about those cultures, what I liked about my managers and mentors, what I didn't like. This place was toxic. This was like ego led.
Yep.
This place had a great culture. And I would carry that around. And then I started a company about 17 years ago with some other partners. And that's what Mechanism is today. And, we started small and broke, and we just grinded it out, and now we're got 32 companies. You've heard of most of the companies we work with, and we got 4 offices and hundreds of staff, and it's been a wild ride, and I still like it. Like back to when I was that kid watching those commercials, I still love being around the creative process and helping brands build what they're going to become and how they're going to communicate to the world. And one other, while I'm on a roll here, one other thing, because you mentioned music.
Yeah.
The other thing that kind of got me into branding and marketing, and I really understood the power of it, was the band Kiss. And Kiss, my first concert was a Kiss concert. I don't even really think they're that good. I don't love their music,
but they're some of the greatest entertainers ever.
But they're entertainers, and they created mythology. They created this Kiss brand with like, the way the Kiss logo is designed, and they used makeup and characters and the demon and the star child and the cat, and they wore high heels and spit blood, and there was flames. And that to me really got me thinking, all right, well, man, this I like would buy all the Kiss stuff. I was in the Kiss army. I was like a rabid fan. And so that really, I understood branding and how you can build a good brand. They're one of the top selling bands of all time, and they're 100 millionaires from selling all their merch. And before that, they were playing the same songs in Brooklyn dive bars to like 9 people without their makeup on, without their characters, without their story, without their logo. And they were just like, whatever. They would have been like, you never would have heard them. Right. But then the power of marketing and the power of the Kiss brand is so strong. That's what catapulted them into, the stratosphere. So between that that made me love branding. That was part of my love of music. By the way, side story is I made my kids go to their first concert was a Kiss concert at Madison Square
Really?
Garden. Yeah, and we all dressed in face paint. And halfway through the concert, they were like, "Dad, this sucks. Let's go home." Like, so I was like, "All right." But now, when they do that thing in any meeting where they're like, "What was your first concert?" They're gonna have to say Kiss. So I kind of
Well,
win.
I have a couple Kiss stories, which are cool
Uh,
because, first of all, I grew up, my dad was a huge music lover. My mom was a huge music lover, but two different spectrums. Pops was listening to Kiss, Peter Frampton, Zeppelin, like the rock stuff. And my mom was Billy Joel, Elton John, the Beatles, you know, and so I had this like best of all worlds, in my
I love
opinion,
that.
with great
Yeah,
musicians. And so mom was a story person. My dad was the beat and the melody and the rhythm. Like it was all about the guitars and the drums. And my mom was listening to what the song meant. And I always identified with both, but I always lent more towards the story. And I imagine with marketing and branding, you're describing somebody that pays attention to both, but you're really paying attention also to what the end user feels and
yeah,
sees.
yeah. That's right.
And Kiss. So my dad had all the Kiss albums. He played Kiss all the time. And so when I was in college, I bought my mom tickets to go see, my mom and I both, to go see Billy Joel and Elton John playing on the dueling pianos. And the next year I bought my dad like the Kiss reunion tour tickets so that and I had no money, by the way. We just talked about how broke we were in college. Like I used
Yeah.
everything I had to wow my parents. And I did it with music. So I resonated a lot with your
Did you
story.
take them together, or
I
did you
did.
go?
I
No.
let my mom go with my dad, which is what he would prefer. My
All right.
dad loves me, but my dad loves my mom more than anything. So
Okay.
that was, they went together. My mom and I went to Billy Joel and Elton John, and I thought our seats were the worst. There was a curtain. The opening band came on. Nobody knew the opening band. There was a curtain blocking our seats. We were up in the top at the MCI Arena in DC, and we were behind the stage. And I looked at my mom and I was like, I'm so sorry. I thought I got scammed. It was the first thing I ever bought on eBay. And literally the first thing I ever bought on eBay in like 1998 or 97 or something, 99 max. And all of a sudden the stage turns and the curtain opens and we are right on top of Elton John and Billy Joel as
Oh
they
man,
dual
that's so
pianos and
awesome.
play. Like it was mind blowing and such a phenomenal concert. I'll never forget it. But I did not go to see Kiss. I still have never seen Kiss. And I think that train might have sailed. I don't know. But
Who was better, Billy Joel or Elton John?
man, so I've seen Elton John alone a couple times. I feel like Billy Joel had a different level of soul, but
Yeah.
Elton John sang a way that was just, you know, this was before his vocal cords were a little bit strained, and like now he doesn't sound like he used to, but they were so good together. They sang each other's songs and they switched pianos and they were like, it was just the ultimate entertainment.
Yeah.
And you know, if you go see, you talked about the entertainment, when you go see an Ed Sheeran concert today, like
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran stands in front of the crowd with a loop machine, right? And he basically plays every part of the band as an individual. He's like the hardest working guy on stage. And while everybody else is waiting for their song, I'm watching how he develops a song, how the crowd stays engaged, how he knows when to stop a song and build the next song. And I mean, I just geek out on the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, that's part of the story with music. Music kind of gives us our first glimpse into feeling something that goes beyond what the person that's producing it, they hope you feel it, but they don't know what you're going to feel. And it can be completely different from person to person. And, you know, that's what I felt like. My mom danced the whole time. I was embarrassed. I was like 18, 19 years old, but we had a great time. And I'll never forget those moments, but I love that you
That's
took your
awesome that you
kids.
did that. That's so cool.
Isn't
Yeah,
that cool?
I've seen Billy Joel like 7, 8 times. I think he's just so good.
Really. He's amazing.
Yeah, he can just sing, man.
Dude, the storytelling was unbelievable. Like I still love his music. I listen to it all the time. I have a couple of vinyls that like are your go-to, and The Stranger is just an absolute,
I love The
like,
Stranger.
it knocks it out of the park. So tell me
Fucking awesome.
how
All right, let's get
tell
into
me,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
tell me
no.
how music shaped your career and your success, though, because there's a couple stories I want to go into. Original, persuasion, and business. Like, talk to me a little bit about this chapter in the book and like what this means, because I think this chapter actually pulls music together with this. Correct?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So my book, my philosophy, we talked about life and your philosophy, and there's a lot of similarities. And so when I wrote the book, mine is really all about, your angles on high performance, right? And helping people become high performers. And my book, The Soulful Art of Persuasion, is all about helping people become more influential and more persuasive, which AKA could be performing better, being more successful
Yeah, it's all
in your
aligned.
it's all aligned in your business or in your personal life. But my four principles, just I'll break them down and then go into the music thing. But principle one is about being original, and it's really all about how to be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. How do you really be true to yourself, understand your values? Principle two is about being generous, creating a ethos of generosity. Principle three is about empathetic and understanding how to connect with other people. And then principle four is about soulful, which is really, you would call it impact. It's about being, you're being persuasive by being inspirational, by doing something that's beyond just for yourself.
Yeah.
And that makes you more inspirational, leads you to a better, happier life, healthier life as well. But those four things are my principles, and then there's a bunch of tactics underneath those on how to become more of an influencer in your business and in your personal life. But that's really how, when I look back at building my business over 17 years, that's really how I did it, by kind of having that philosophy and the way I approached it. And that's really why I wanted to write the book, to share. And so the first principle, which is the building block, which is all about being original, which is leading into your uniqueness, leading into your idiosyncrasies, what makes you you, understanding that, embracing it, diving into it, telling stories about it, trying to connect with people through storytelling and emotion and through narrative. And I learned that principle, that idea of being original, from one of my favorite artists of all time, David Bowie. And so David Bowie, to me, is the symbol or the representative of being a complete original. And what I talk about in the book is when he always knew he wanted to be a singer. He always knew he wanted to be a rock star. He got an album deal when he was like 19, and they had him dress and look and sound like Bob Dylan because that was popular at the time. So they wanted him to be a folk artist. And really, the album tried to shape him into what was already out there. And that album tanked. I actually have a copy of it, which I had to hunt down in like a used record store because it's really hard to find. And he realized, man, this is not me. I'm doing what the label wants. I'm doing what other people want. And no wonder it bombed. Like, it's the same shit that's already out there.
Right.
Right. And so he went away and went to a monastery, learned, like, studied mime. I don't know why he studied mime, did some experimental art, really went to find himself, and went on a sojourn of a couple of years to tap into what he wanted to become and who he was. And then he came back with Space Oddity, and that album took off. And then he had a million incarnations and just went deeper and deeper into his weirdness and who he was, and tapped into, the soul of David Bowie. And David Bowie became a real pioneer and a unique person that uh, became a rock star that influenced dozens and dozens of other bands that we all know today. And so that, to me, is just a prime example of, when you're doing what other people want you to do, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be a high performer. when you really know what you are, what makes you unique, and you lean into that, that's going to make you connect with an audience and become a big success. And so that's
Yes,
kind of the main
that's great.
principle. Yeah,
Yeah, and the more you can lean into your strengths, the more you can really find and fine tune the strength that you have. I mean, it's sort of like a professional, right? If you're a professional quarterback, but you're playing three other positions, it's really difficult to fine tune that behind center quarterback job. And what I love is when you build towards your strengths and you go out, even if it's super different from everybody else, that's the stuff that ends up standing out. And Bowie went on to shape a ton of other musicians in the industry where people followed him instead of Dylan, and they had their own success.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that to me is really I get a lot. I have a lot of references and for different musicians that inspired me in the book, but that one is okay. Don't start a job. Don't perform. Don't go. You should be the same in your personal life as you are in your professional life, and you should lean into who you are and be clear with who you are, and be inspired by your uniqueness. Understand your core values. Write your values down. That's important practice too, to actually put values to paper, because that can be a filter in your life of things you will and won't do, people you will and won't spend time with, clients you will and won't work with. And so it's just really important to dive into who you are and know yourself really well, kind of before you do anything else. Like that's kind of step one.
Well, it's sort of like you can't be loved if you don't love yourself.
Yeah,
If you don't
exactly.
love yourself and you don't dive into the depths of what makes you who you are, and you expect somebody else to love you, I talk about this a lot of time in building relationships, where when you're building a relationship, everything is transaction based around you. So many people just want to shake your hand, look you in the eye, take you for what you want, what they want to take, and move on. But if you are so comfortable with who you are and what you stand for, that you can use another principle of yours, give it away,
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
authentic, truly
yeah,
be transparent, and give without expectation, you're going to find that people will start to invest in you in levels that are 10 times more. And that plays right into, your generosity,
right.
which is giving without expectation. Talk a little bit about that, and maybe tell a story. I read a couple of different stories that were super cool, but when you started your company, you guys were actually giving stuff away to build brand recognition and an
Yeah,
opportunity for future. I'd love for you to share that story.
yeah, sure. Yeah. So this principle about being generous, giving something away at every interaction. So whenever you cross paths with someone, your goal is to leave them a little bit better off. And, it's got to be genuine, but it really lays the groundwork for collaboration and for building your network and for success that is to come in the future. And this is something I had to practice so it became habitual. I did not start as a generous person. Like that is just not in my nature. I'm probably more like self-centered. I mean, I'm not anymore, but when I started my business, I wouldn't give free advice to, people starting their own business. I wouldn't give away contacts I had, vendors I would use, partners I would shoot work with. I wouldn't give that stuff away. I kind of hoarded it. And then my network and my world got very small after a period of time. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. It's not a zero sum game. Like if someone else is successful, it doesn't mean I'm not going to be successful. We can all be successful. And if I help other people, they're going to help me. And if I refer someone to them down the road, they might refer someone to me. And so I had to kind of wake up and understand that and then learn that. Now I'm incredibly generous with my time and my contacts and my advice, and I always try to mentor and help people. And so that really was a big sea change. And there was one particular client that I always think about, and I call it is a chapter in the book called the $1 Million Hoodie. And I met a guy that worked for Ben and Jerry's in at some conference, and I just thought he was cool, and so I got his contact info, And I said, we love doing swag at this company. Like, we'll send you swag after this. And we had these cool hoodies that we used a Mechanism logo in the Metallica font. And I sent him one of these hoodies. And Ben and Jerry's is based in Burlington, Vermont, and I've been in that office a bunch of times. Pretty cold up there. He used to wear this hoodie all the time. And 2 years later, after I sent him this hoodie that he wore all the time, they're like, we're going to fire our agency and we're going to do an agency search for some other agencies. And he looked down. He's like, oh, yeah, Mechanism. These guys, this guy sent me a hoodie. I'll throw them in the mix as like the dark horse. And we pitched the business and won it. And they were our client for 8 years.
That's
and
awesome.
and so like one, $20 hoodie turned into millions of revenue, just by that simple thing of like, this guy's cool, I'm just going to send him some stuff. And generosity isn't about literally giving gifts away. It can be your time or your lessons or values or helping other people improve, kind of like what you're doing with your work, and on this podcast. And so that example always sticks in my mind, is like, all right, man, giving stuff away actually can pay big dividends, and you don't know how or when, but it can. And when you're thinking transactionally and you're thinking of deal happen, it's binary, yes or no, move on to the next one, yes or no, I got to get these sales numbers for each quarter, versus never be closing. Instead of always be closing, never be closing, and thinking about, how do I play the long game? Every contact I make, I spend investing in that person, learning about that person. That's someone I should always stay in touch with, whether I get their business or not, because that's going to build a meaningful relationship and an enduring relationship. And that's going to widen my possibilities. It's going to widen my network. It's not just about getting their wallet to open up,
Yeah.
because that's just one part of it. That's one tiny part of it. And so, yeah, that's something that really transformed me and my business when I started thinking in that way.
Well, I think generosity, what I've found from a lot of personal experience, as well as meeting and talking to lots of great people who have done this, the most generous people I've met were not generous when they started. It was mainly because they came from a scarcity mindset. They had to shift to abundance. And I was the same way. I described early in my career as laying down and punching up at the world. And everybody that came at me, it was like, dude, you don't know me yet. You need to know. I'll help you do this. I'll do this. And I was always good at building relationships, but I was really about taking what I could when I was really young. And when I shifted it to giving what I had, it
Yeah,
was amazing how selfish giving is in a positive way, meaning that when I give of myself to you and I give everything I've got, I feel amazing because I've helped you. And it's way more fulfilling in life to do that than it is to try to take anything. Life, Joe Polish says, life gives to the givers and takes from the takers. And there's no truer statement. But I love that concept. And what you're really doing is you're building relationships for the long haul. It's sort of like if we were in college and you're dating somebody, right? And the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking, remember when you'd meet someone and you'd be like, oh man, this person's special.
yeah,
There's a bigger potential in this connection. I don't want to ruin this. So you thought long, not short. You were like, okay, how do I develop a bigger relationship? How do I get to know the circle? You start thinking peripherally, not just right now. And sometimes you go into a business deal and what you're describing is, if I go in and maybe they're contracting me on something super small, but I see the long game. I want to go in with the long game in mind, even if I sacrifice the short game.
that's exactly right. And you have to really make that switch of short-term transactional thinking, which when you're an entrepreneur or starting a business or whatever you might be doing, it's an important shift, because you're thinking like, man, I got to hit my numbers this month. I got to hit my numbers this quarter. But you got to wipe that away, and you got to think about, all right, it's all a long game, and I got to play it at a high level.
So,
Yeah. So
so true.
the other thing we did, which you kind of talked a little bit about or mentioned, is when we started the company, um, and this isn't really part of necessarily the generosity principle. This was more of a business building concept is, there was four of us when we started the company. We were broke as hell, uh, barely getting paid any money. We were working with like tiny brands, tiny companies. I obviously was thinking much bigger. And so we would cold call and proactively pitch big brands, like famous brands that we wanted to work with. And we would just call them up and say, "Hey, I know you have this product coming out. We have a killer idea. We got to show you." And then we call 10 companies, and maybe two of them would say, "All right, we'll hear your idea." And then we'd scramble and come up with an idea because we booked the meeting.
Yep.
We would like work backwards. And then we go in and pitch them an idea. And then if they liked it, we would say, "You don't even have to pay for it. We'll make it. And if you like it, you'll run it." And that we actually invested in those relationships so we could get big brands on our roster. So then we could get really other big brands that would pay us. And so if you've got small fry brands, you're not going to get the big brands that you're aiming for. And so our idea was to build those logos, build those case studies, and make it impossible for them to say no, so that we could build that in the first early years, so we could really build and grow a business. And it's not natural to be like, why would I give something away to like Microsoft, or, like, why would I do that? They're loaded. Like they could, but that is the thing that really helped build the business. Is we would just go in there and do things at cost or no cost in order to build a company, and it built us a lot faster doing it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was in a meeting a couple of months ago. It's amazing how a logo, by the way, can totally change your mindset of what you're looking at for a company. It was a huge company, and they're I won't even say what industry they're in, but the logo looked like it was designed in 1960, and it looked like the poop emoji. And I remember going, as I'm looking at this, and they're talking about the innovation that the company stands for. And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, but I can't get past your poop emoji logo. Like, where are we going to innovate the logo? It's typical in the financial world, everything's about the analytics and the logic, and down underneath the book and the inside parts of the book, but the cover doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because at the end of the day, that's something that people are seeing. And when you're going out there and you're going to Microsoft and you're going to these bigger, older companies, they get stale and they get old, and having someone young and innovative and interesting and interested means that you're going to have somebody that's going to be fresh, and that could change the whole dynamic of your company.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm dying to figure out what that poop.
I'll tell you off air. I'll never take anybody down on air, but I'll tell you, I can narrow it down. I don't even remember the company name. That's how bad the logo was, because I was like, dude, this is garbage. I once went into a meeting for our city. You'll appreciate this, in the city of Chesapeake, and it was a group of really influential business leaders. And I went into the room, and where it was my first meeting in this alliance on how to change the city to move it in a positive direction in these areas. And I said, hey, if we're going to start somewhere, can we start on the purplish brown logo that the city of Chesapeake has everywhere? That sucks. It looks boring. You guys are trying to attract major businesses. We're the home of Dollar Tree. We have innovative businesses that are coming to this area all over the country. And we have the beat logo that's purplish brown from 1972 that nobody's thought to innovate and develop. And while Virginia Beach is innovated every couple of years, and Norfolk's, always cool, and Chesapeake is like the neighborhood that your neighbor puts up the fence, the other neighborhood puts up the fence, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, good. All I have to do is close the fence in the back, and I could just use their fences. Well, I was like, if you want to think innovative, let's think bigger. And all these old guys in the room were like, oh, this guy wants to focus on the logo. And I said, it starts with what people see and feel when they think of your name.
Yeah, that's like spoken like a marketing guy right there.
Yeah, that's me, man. I know you would appreciate that, but these are the kinds of things that you talk about in your book. These are the kinds of examples that you talk about as part of the soul of what you're trying to accomplish in your principles, and principles just give you exactly what you're trying to build off of. And we want to, I want to go to the next one, which you talk about empathy.
Yeah.
And I just want you to talk a little bit about that, because I think if we hit on these principles, someone can watch that, they can listen, they can watch, they can really learn from real marketing opportunities, as well as in any business that they have.
Yeah. So, empathy is a big word that we talk about. It's very popular today, right? We want more empathy in the world, right? We want to be more empathetic. And as it applies to business and selling and performing, really it's about understanding a natural curiosity about other people and listening and learning and trying to connect on a deeper level and realize that there's way more commonalities we all have than differences, but we're in such a fake news, bifurcated world where we're in our own little channels and echo chambers. And this is really a bigger way of thinking, where you try to find collaborations and you try to find commonalities and not differences. And it was a real important principle when I started the company. I didn't call it empathetic, but it's really about, the collaboration imperative and really understanding that we're all 99.9% the same DNA, and there's 0.1% that separates each of us. And when you think about life from that viewpoint, everything kind of changes versus, I don't like that person, I don't like this person. Where can we find the commonalities, and how do you connect with the world writ large? And that's going to help you perform better and propel you to be more successful, because there's always a connection point. There is always a connection point. I interviewed this week a monk who he's a gay Jewish Buddhist monk, and he came out with a book called Untangled, and it's all about turning fear into compassion. And it was just really amazing, some of the practices that he has, where every morning, for example, he'll log on to a white supremacy website. And he does that to remind himself that there's good in everyone, and there's more in common we have with each other than we think. And he does that to go kind of to the extreme. Like, he's this like very peaceful monk, and he embraces that and absorbs it to remind himself, I can even find similarities in these people. And that's just that's an extreme practice, but that's really what I'm talking about with having an empathetic mindset and trying to
it's opening your mind, right? I mean, it's what you're doing is, I had a conversation on a previous podcast where we talk about open-mindedness as one of the 25 most important attributes someone could have towards success at anything they do. And when you're open-minded, you have to be curious about everything that you don't understand and everything that you might be deciding upon before you have a true understanding. Yeah. And curiosity would really help in the world of this polarized opposites that we live in. If you look at some of the most, you reference the founding fathers in your book, and you talk about taxation without representation and the discussion of the founding fathers. And for anyone that studies the history of America, there were a lot of differing opinions, but those differing opinions helped form the entire system that we have today, which is, it's I'm sure people can find the fallacy in it, but it's one of the best, if not the best in the world. And I love,
and if there was more empathy, we might not even have America today. Like if Britain really thought about, all right, we're gonna not abuse the colonists as they're just giving us money, but we're gonna actually invest in them and help them grow. And they had a different viewpoint. They have an empathetic viewpoint. Imagine
what would happen.
Imagine where they'd be today and the power that they had. But because they didn't have empathy and they were short-term thinking and they weren't playing the long game, they were transactional, everyone revolted. They started America, and that's who we are today.
Wars come from selfishness a lot of times, and they come from the word. The word I think that people get confused about the most is the two words cost versus investment. See, you just talked about investing in humans, investing in relationships, investing in the future of a country, which if they invested properly, then this place would have flourished and it would have been another colony that would have yielded the most results. But it didn't do that. And the cost was what they were looking at. What are we making from them? What's our ROI? How many business deals do you listen to, or people that you won't want to do business with, where you go in, they're immediately like, hey, Jason, I just want to understand what's the ROI on this, like 2 months in. And you're like,
it happens all the time.
oh God,
Oh my God, all the time.
I want to jump out of a window when they do this.
I know. One other thing while we're on this topic is when we work with clients, we this is sort of in the empathetic wheelhouse, but I've trained everyone to think about clients, and I have this phrase, assume genius. So we assume our clients are geniuses and that they know their company and they know their products, and we're going to help them sell those products and build brands and connect with an audience. And that's what we're going to do as a business. And when I worked at other places, like we talked about, where I would sort of like track what I liked and didn't like at other companies I worked at before, they would try to like shove the same idea down the client's throat over and over again. And when the client hung up the phone, we'd be in a room full of people, and everyone would be like, man, client's so stupid, like they suck. Like,
yeah.
we gotta save them from themselves. And that mindset I really felt was toxic, and I hated it. And I never wanted to see that when I started my company. I wanted people to embrace that clients assume they're genius and go from there, and never hang up the phone and talk trash. Like, that is just bad energy. These are people that are hiring us. They're paying us. We got to figure out how to collaborate with them. We got to figure out how to connect with them. And anyway, that's just like a side note. But I think anyone in any business, you have to just assume the client you're working with is a good person and they know what they're doing. And
Well,
you start from there. Yeah.
I'll lead us right into your last principle, because you talk about building character, and building character comes from the importance of skill. Is it skill hunting? Is that what is?
Yeah. Skill hunting.
Yeah. So what you're talking about right now, just to pull you into that principle, but is building character starts with doing the right thing. Even if you think the client doesn't make sense, what you have to figure out is how I can better communicate with this client. Maybe I'm not saying what I need to be saying in the clearest, concise manner. Maybe I'm I'll use a fake word, complexifying something instead of simplifying it. A lot of times it comes from our own mistakes, and we assume the other person just is not following us, but it's just the way that we're communicating.
Yeah, well, I always think about that when we have a bang on idea on how to build a brand for someone, and we don't sell the idea. I always say, all right, well, it's not that they didn't buy it. It's that we didn't explain it properly. We didn't make it simple. We didn't make it clear. We didn't make it sticky. And so we missed. It's on us. It's not on them because they didn't buy it. We did something wrong. And that's always like something that I always think about, versus they're too stupid to understand it or buy it,
Right.
But back into the last principle of Soulful, skill hunting is really where we create high performance in our life by being proficient at something. And I referenced this study, like the most trusted man in America came out like 2 years ago, some Gallup poll. The most trusted man in America is Tom Hanks. And it's not because we know Tom Hanks that well, or we know all the good things he does in the world. We just know that he's a very proficient actor. He's mastered his craft. Whatever he is in, he does an amazing job. That builds trust. If you are proficient at your craft and you are good at what you do, that is going to build trust and make you successful. And you got to have that proficiency. And skill hunting, to me, is every couple years having that practice of going out and learning something new. And it could be, all right, I want to learn chess. And then you focus for 2 years in some extra time on chess, or I want to play the guitar, or I want to learn how to cook. It could be anything, right? But every couple of years, adding on a new skill that you can get proficient in to your repertoire. And there's a lot of, I think, high performance attributes that come out of that, because you have to go through it. It's not just, all right, I'm good at as a financial advisor and I play tennis on the weekends and that's it. You got to go through learning new skills. You got to hunt for new skills, because you have to go through that process and remind yourself of the pain and the part where you suck and you're not good at it and you don't understand it. And then you get a little bit better and you understand a little bit more. And then, wow, that thing came out pretty good. Oh, I'm going to do another one. And then over time, you build that skill. And it's going through that suck part to come out the other side that really helps, I think, on your character. And then the second part of soulfulness for me, which leads into being more persuasive, is I think you talk about it as faith, which is knowing that you're doing something bigger than just for yourself.
Yeah.
And I
The
call
why,
that
your why.
your why. And that's part of being soulful, is being more inspirational by taking a skill, simple exercise. If you take on the left column 2 or 3 things you're really proficient at or skilled in, and on the right column 2 or 3 things in the world you care about. And if you look at that list long enough, you're going to find something that you can do to make the world a better place. Whether you're, I don't know, helping with financial literacy for people that can't do it, and you do that once a week. Or if you're, a writer and you're going to, help people, I don't know, write love stories for their significant other, and you're going to partner with people to do that. Or, there's a friend of mine who's a barber. He would cut, on the weekends, he would cut homeless people's hair to make them feel more dignified. But whatever skill you have, trying to do something to put it out there to make the world a little bit better than you left it, that has a boomerang effect, right? It's making you more inspirational, making you more influential, because you're doing something beyond yourself, and it's going to make you feel better. Like, it's going to bring more joy to your life, because you're not just doing selfish activities. You're adding to the world. You're making the world a better place. It could be simple. It could be big. So in my case, the skill I have is I know how to build brands, and I'm good at advertising and marketing. So I do that. My company does a lot of free work for, anti-racism campaigns, combating sexual assault, you name it. We do a lot of those types of free campaigns, leveraging our skill to put back into the world. So it can really be anything, but to me, that is an important part of becoming more influential.
Yeah, it's where your why and your what can come together. So for me, that's where faith or something bigger than yourself and your impact merge. And the example we talked about briefly before we started was when I started the wine festival here in our city. I noticed that Virginia was trending up on wineries, the 5th largest producer in the country. I was interested in wine as a new skill. So building a new skill, I wanted to learn about it. And I knew my family and my friends loved it too. And I had always been good at bringing people together. So I was like, hey, if I pull the right people together and we have a really big event, we can make something bigger than ourselves. We can have a really great time doing it. And ultimately, I can learn about wines. And so the best man at my wedding, one of my best friends, the level 2 Som, he does all the wines that aren't Virginia driven. So they're international. We've learned so much. We've done wine dinners. Our spouses love it. Our families love it. And we've given so much money to charity. But most importantly, like you and I talked about, I was getting more out of that than I was my career. Midway through my career, 7-8 years in, I felt empty. It was just, I wasn't chasing money. I just was feeling a little bit empty. And this reinvigorated my life in ways that showed me other avenues to pull the worlds together and connect the what and the why so that I could show up better and make a bigger difference. And I love that about being soulful and the way you say that, because I think that's what we all stand for. And when you stand for something and you do so and you leverage it to make a difference, there's that. I don't know how many kids right now are getting Christmas presents from people that I know, that we know. I got a call from a local high school yesterday that said, hey, we had 24 Angel Tree kids and there's only 14. There's 14 left and it's due today. And a guidance counselor called me because they know that we've done these for other families. And this isn't I'm a good guy story. This is, just being the centerpiece that can connect the dots to help bigger groups together is something that you want to be known for. And that's what you're building with brands. That's what you're building with Soulful. That's what you're building with everything you're doing every day.
Yeah. And I call it, I like the boomerang effect idea, because the purpose isn't to make you a good guy, right? The purpose is to do something beyond yourself that isn't about you or your business or your personal life. But the effect that it has on you is enormous. And it comes right back to you tenfold, because you are uplifted and you see life differently, and it brings more joy. And doing something for other people, people always put it off. They always like, well, if I get more successful, if this other thing happens, then maybe I'll put some good into the world. You got to be putting good into the world like today, tomorrow, and good things will come back to you.
Yeah. Focus this in my book. I talk about living a legacy versus leaving a legacy. Most people focus on leaving a legacy. They focus on the end game. But if you're living a legacy, I have something called the habit of daily impact. And it's the smallest item that catapults into a multitude of joy. So if I hold the door for you, I smile at you, I recognize that you're working behind the grocery store counter and you're overwhelmed, and I see it on your face, and I just say, hey, thanks for working today. I'm grateful. At Starbucks, when they are absolutely just enthralled with people and dying, I'll go in and drop something in the tip jar and just say, hey guys, thanks for working. They worked on Thanksgiving Day, and I went and got a cold brew in between my families. And I walked in, told every one of them, thank you. Super simple, guys, but it's just something that you're acknowledging that other people exist in moments outside of yourself. And it's living what you want to be remembered by, not waiting to be remembered by something. And that's exactly what you're saying.
I love that.
So Jason, you're a badass in your industry. You've got a great story. I've loved getting to know you. It's been fun talking with you, talking music, pulling it all together into business. Tell people how they can find you, how they can find your company if they're looking for a fresh rebrand or anything that you could help bring to the table, and ultimately how they can find your book.
Yeah, sure. So you can find out more about me at thesoulfulart.com, and that has a lot about me, a lot about the book. And then my company, if you want to explore it, it's Mechanism, and it's mekanism.com. mekanism.com, Mechanism. You can find out more about the company. And then, the Soulful Art of Persuasion, buy it anywhere. It's around, but I hope you do buy it, because I put a lot of love into it, and I always go back to it too. I don't know if you go back to yours
all the time,
your book, but I go back to it like, oh man, I got to remember to do that. Like I got to always practice what I'm preaching here.
Dude, we have people send me videos that I do, and they'll say, this one hit me so hard, Scott. It was absolutely the perfect thing. And I'll be like, which one was it? And they'll send it to me. I will rewatch it. And sometimes it is exactly the message I needed to hear for myself that day.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Just because you know it doesn't mean that you do it every day.
Nah,
like
you gotta, it's constant practice.
That's it. And so Jason, you've done great things, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I want to be mindful of the time, but I appreciate the story, the vibe, the whole experience. Thanks for taking our listeners on this ride. And I look forward to them finding you and us talking in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome. Thanks. It's good to meet a fellow soulful person.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.